Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Whether it is speaking about young carers, improving the pay and the conditions for our care workers, or pushing the reforms for social care for our older citizens, I find myself in this place speaking about social care countless times since my election. So one can conclude that I'm obviously happy that the government is beginning to tackle this issue. And you might expect me to say that as the MP who represents North Norfolk, an area where the social care sector is particularly important given the demographic of my residents. And as I've said to the many people who have asked for my thoughts about this bill, in my view, the prize of fixing social care is far greater in the long term than bickering about how we pay for it. Now, it is regrettable, obviously, that we have to increase tax, but one simply has to be able to recognise the situation that the country is finding itself in. The Exchequer cannot keep funding in the current tax take 12 to 14 billion pounds a year, not with the extent at which it's already supported the country to the tune of some 400 billion. And I think any reasonable person can recognise that, and it would be fiscally irresponsible to continue to heap debt upon debt. And there's probably no right way of creating the funding that we all require that will satisfy everybody. But equally, there's no wrong way either. And as I have not heard of a significant amount of consensus, a marginal rise in national insurance, where, as we know, employees as well as employers will contribute, has to a large degree in my constituency been met with some understanding of the conundrum that we face. Now, the opposition were asked time and time again, and the honourable member at the dispatch box would not put a marker in the sand at all at what he would do. Yes, I'll give way.
Can I just say, I know the honourable member said that it would be fiscally irresponsible to increase debt, but is he aware that the cost of debt, the interest cost per year, has gone down last year by £14 billion because of historically low interest rates? And therefore, at this particular window in time, as we're coming out of a pandemic, wouldn't it be better not to tax jobs?
Well, I thank the honourable member for giving way. I'm sure he will remember the old adage that what goes up must come down, and obviously vice versa it can happen as well. I think this government has been incredibly financially prudent over the years, and I think most constituents around the country would recognise, thank goodness that we have had a Conservative government looking after this country, who have produced one of the best responses to the pandemic in the entire world. Now, I think what actually constituents want to see now is the tangible changes on the ground and the benefits. And that proposal that we've seen today is probably one of the greatest welfare benefits we've had. A security that there is a cap on how much you pay in later life for your care cost, and the security that you will not have to sell your home in later life will create security for a great number of people. But what I want to just say to the Treasury is three things as the White Paper comes forward, and get them on the record. Because as a patron for the Holt Youth Project, which is a marvellous young people's charity in my constituency, they have looked after some 50 young carers through the pandemic. And everybody knows that the life chances for young people who are looking after a sick or debilitated parent is significantly affected. I want to make sure that we can channel the funding that we get from this, and there's been many asks, we've heard dementia, all incredibly important causes. But please, let's make sure we fund young carers properly. Let's, secondly, make sure that unpaid carers are properly looked after. For those that take the burden off the state to care for their loved ones, the current allowance of £67 a week that costs the Treasury £3 billion a year must be looked at again. And finally, I want to just address the recurring problem we hear about all the time is the shortage of care workers in the care sector. These people need to have the same high status and high regard as any NHS worker. The skills required to care for somebody with dementia or giving end-of-life care is something that we have to tackle and get to grips with and make sure these people are properly rewarded.
To resume your seat no later than 4